If you have any questions, let me know. I'm going to be pretty brief here, and we'll just fly through this. First of all, one of the primary differences between the RGH and a retail Xbox is the presence of homebrew applications, which you use to manage a lot of settings in the backend as far as how you connect to the XBL servers and all the rest. So that's primarily what I'll show you initially at the moment. First of all, most important thing to always remember is never ever go into any of the homebrew apps when you're logged into your account. That's one really easy way of getting banned a lot faster than you have to. And in case you're wondering, homebrew applications would be like XEX menu, which you're looking at the icon for right now. The other would be dash launch, things like that, and that's what I'm going to show you right now. So when you fire up your Xbox, depending on how you start it, you'll usually land here. If you're not currently banned, you will be seeing the usual stuff here. Otherwise, it's going to just have this black box of death, in which case you probably need to get unbanned by dropping KV on, which we'll talk about later. But as a brief overview of the XEX menu and dash launch and making sure all the settings are right, first of all, go into Recent and XEX menu 1.2. It's going to remind you to log in, which it's a lie. Don't log in. So hit the red B button just to back out of that. If you have saved any disks to your console, you're going to see these first under Games Discovery. And the XEX menu, which you're in right now, is got 3 main navigation screens, which you use with the left and right bumpers to navigate through. The first one is your Games Discovery, any games that you currently have on the actual device, hard drive. The second one is like a Windows Explorer or Finder view of all the files on your hard drive. And the third section is configuration, which you really don't have to worry about much, except it's a handy way of getting your IP address in case you're connecting with Xbox Neighborhood. Really, the only thing you'll need to do in here in most cases is to either boot up a game, USB drive, or to change which plugins you're using or whatnot. So when you're looking at the hard drive, and if anything doesn't make sense here as far as what is what, it'll all kind of come together by the end. But the cache folder you can ignore. The content folder you can ignore for right now as well. DL 3.14 installer, that's the folder that contains the dash launch program, which we'll talk about in a moment. So if you ever need to go directly into dash launch, that's where you do it, in the DL for dash launch installer folder. Rule of thumb, typically default.xex is the file that you would open different programs or games in, depending on how you have them saved. So for dash launch, you go into the DL folder and you just click A over default.xex, and that will load you directly into dash launch, which we'll review in just a minute. Flash 360 is not on the hard drive by default. It's on mine because I made a dump of the NAND, and that's a little bit deeper. We'll talk about that later. That's only necessary really if there's a dashboard update or if you are flashing a KV to the NAND. And again, we'll talk about that in a moment as well. Back to the hard drive, Freestyle. I never use Freestyle. It's kind of like the normal Xbox dashboard home. I never use it. If you want to, you can. It's really preference. Just mess around with it when you want. The games directory I made myself. That's just a place that I rip all my games to. I never play off of the disk. I always play off of the hard drive. And finally, this is the juicy part right here. These folders are all sitting on your root, and I'll list the important ones. 420 menu is my particular mod menu for GTA 5. If you have any mod menus like for Call of Duty or for Black Ops, GTA, whatever, you want to just drop those mod menus in there. A mod menu file is typically going to be a .xex file. XEX file, think of it similar to like an exe file on a Windows computer. It's like an executable. I know that's not the probably the best way of explaining it, but it's probably the easiest way for you to understand exactly, just what it does, I guess. The CPU key.txt and the kv.ben. These two files are what you use to essentially purchase a new Xbox every time you get banned. When you get banned, you can either get banned by like EA Gaming or Rockstar or Microsoft. If you get banned by Microsoft, you either need to make a new gamer tag, which would be like a new Xbox Live account, or you would need to buy a brand new console for a couple $100. If they console ban you, then that's pretty much the I got effed moment, which you're going to have a lot of them in the future, so just don't panic when it happens. Instead of buying a new console, you simply go to one of my recommended KV dealers and you buy a new KV. A KV stands for Key Vault, and it's essentially like a new MAC address for your computer. It's a new way of identifying your console. So when you remove the KV that got banned and you put a new KV on there that costs anywhere from $5 to $15, usually you can get them for like $6 or $7. When you put a new KV on there, it will basically tells Microsoft that this is not the same console that got banned. It's a brand new console that's not been banned yet. So that's what KV does. CPU key, it's not 100% necessary. If you buy a KV and it doesn't include the CPU key, don't worry about it. But if you buy a KV with a CPU key, then you want to drop that in as well. A CPU key might be a .txt file or it might be a .bin file. Either way, kv.bin and cpu.txt, they always go right here in your root main hard drive directory, and I will post that in the description below afterwards so it makes more sense as far as the location. Infernus.xex is one of the plethora of ways of connecting to XBL servers. And again, in case you're new to this, XBL stands for Xbox Live, so instead of saying Xbox Live, I'll just refer to it as XBL. When you're connecting to XBL, if you don't connect through a stealth server, essentially spoofing yourself, Microsoft will recognize your console as a modded console, and you'll get insta-banned without even having a chance to get online at all. So there's a few options. One, you can rent time from a stealth server. There's a lot out there. I have a couple that I recommend specifically if you want to use those, which I can leave links to them in the description. The other option is using offline files, which are my personal favorite. However, offline files haven't really worked very well lately since the last dashboard update. There might be some more new ones that come out later, but the current best alternative, if you don't want to pay for stealth, is using infernus.xex. Infernus.xex is a file that when you connect, before your Xbox even hits the Microsoft servers, it gets rerouted. You connect to the Infernus servers first. They do their thing, and then they connect to XBL. So they kind of act as a go-between. So they spoof you, not letting XBL notice that you're actually modding. Infernus.xex, it gets updated regularly. It is completely free. And even though there may be some better alternatives out there, this is the best free alternative out there right now, and it works pretty damn good. It also spoofs gold for you. So if your gamertag or your XBL account gets banned by Microsoft, instead of having to purchase another month of gold or buy 48-hour gold codes or whatever, you can just connect directly, even without getting gold at all, just through a new Xbox Live account, and Infernus will spoof it so that they think you are using gold. jrpc.ini is not a necessary file, but it's a very good file to have. When you drop your kv.bin file in your root, as you're online modding, if there's another modder that bumps into you in a session, if they know how to boot KVs, they can technically steal your KV off of your machine. And, hold on, all right. They can't steal your KV off of your machine. The jrpc.ini file basically protects your KV from getting stolen. That's the best way of explaining it. It's not necessary, but it's really good to have. The necessary files are jrpc.xex, which I'm not going to go into a lot of depth on all of them, but I'll tell you what they do in a moment. Launch.ini, xbdm.ini, xbdm.xex, xrpc. Like a lot to take in. This is an overview of everything that sits on your hard drive that makes your RGH work correctly and be able to connect to XBL. We're going to skip over to Dash Launch now. All right, this right here is simply a GUI or a GUI. It's a it's a visual way of modifying your launch.ini file. The launch file is your settings file that says when I fire up my my RGH, this is how I want it to operate. Instead of editing it in a text editor on your computer, you can make all the modifications directly through Dash Launch. So one thing to remember in Dash Launch is never hit the B button. That will just exit Dash Launch for you. I know intuitively we think B is back, but just don't use the B button. If you use the back button on your controller, it will show different options, as you can see right here. And you want to use your bumper keys, again, to navigate through the main sections of Dash Launch. Bumper keys and your up, down, left, right on the D-pad is the main things you want to be using here. So just to fly through these, when you get the RGH, if you already have Dash Launch set up on it, you're probably not going to want to modify anything in the paths directory. And I'm opening the paths just by toggling it with the A button. This is really just a way of mapping out, like, when I boot up my RGH, do I want it to do special things? So I wouldn't even worry about that. Next is behavior. With behavior, a lot of these can be confusing. I would simply not even mess with them. If you have specific questions about certain ones of these options, then feel free to hit me up. But for someone just getting started, you're better off just noting which ones are enabled and disabled in case something ever accidentally gets changed, and then completely ignoring this particular tab. Network, this is a vital one. Ping patch, you pretty much always want to have this enabled. No net store, you also want this always enabled. And all the rest you keep disabled or as they currently are. Live block and live strong, if you enable both of those, that basically allows you to go into Dash Launch, and no matter what you do, it will block you from even trying to connect to the Xbox Live servers. That's the best way of making sure you don't accidentally ban yourself if you're making changes to your RGH or switching out plugins or moving KBs or something. So if you want to be able to use your RGH without risking accidentally connecting, maybe if you don't have a like a stealth server set up, then enable these two, and that is the easiest way of just making sure that you're not accidentally going to get yourself banned. If you're ever trying to connect online and it's not working, it just can't connect to the internet, this is the first one you want to check. Make sure you disable them if you're connected, if you have a stealth file in here and you are ready to actually use your RGH. If you leave them enabled, it's going to be like you are playing without an internet connection. So this is your first thing to check. So when you're ready to jump online and start playing online gameplay, have your ping patch enabled, have live block and live strong disabled so that you can connect to the Xbox Live servers. You want XHTTP disabled always, no matter what. No net store, just like ping patch, that also can be enabled as well. So that's it for the network. Timers, completely irrelevant in this case, so you can ignore that. Also the configurator, just leave this the same way. That's for if you want to connect with your computer, like over the network. So really the only sections you ever need to really make any changes to in Dash Launch would be network in some cases, and plugins. Now plugins, this is the most important part. I would almost take a picture of the screen just to keep it handy in case you're ever moving things around and you need to know what the correct order is. But plugin order does matter. You have 5 plugins. A plugin does something. In this case, plugin 1 is XBDM. That's for Xbox 360 Neighborhood. And that's simply a program that allows you to control your Xbox using your computer over your home network. You do not have to use Xbox 360 Neighborhood to mod, but it definitely gives you a lot more possibilities in modding when you're using Neighborhood as well. It's also a lot faster simply to move files around, copy, paste, whatever. You can essentially control your Xbox like it's another computer. If you're just getting started, get comfortable with the RGH before you start jumping into Neighborhood. That's my personal recommendation. But you still want to keep xbdm.xex here. That way when you set up Neighborhood, you're good to go. Plugin 2 would be your stealth file. If you are using a different stealth server, then they might tell you to put it somewhere else. In that case, go with what they recommend. However, by default, it's always going to be plugin 2. Plugin 3 and 4 are XRPC and JRPC2. The more you mod, the more you talk and read about a lot of this stuff, you'll find out XRPC is really an updated version of RPC. It does about the same thing, but it is newer. It's like a version 2.0 in essence. JRPC2 is the same idea with JRPC. You might hear some people saying they're running JRPC.xex. Well, JRPC2.xex is really the easiest way of explaining it. It's a version 2.0. So XRPC can replace RPC in those cases. JRPC2.xex can replace JRPC. The last plugin I currently have empty. However, this is where you would put your mod menu, such as 420 or Space Jesus or whichever one you choose to use. So just for editing these, again, if Infernus is working fine for you, you don't really need to touch these first 4. To add or change your plugin, you use the up and down arrows on the D-pad, go over that row, you click the green A button. It'll give you your flash, which you ignore that in HDD. Hit the green again to select HDD, that's your hard drive. HDD stands for hard drive disk. And then you just navigate to wherever your plugin is. With the D-pad, hit the green A button, select it, and there you go. If you want to clear it, you hit the Y button, and that will clear that spot so you're no longer using that specific plugin. Depending on which game you're playing, you want to make sure you're using the correct plugin. So, for example, GTA, I would be using my 420 plugin. And by the way, when you're in the browse section only, you can use the red B button to go back. That's the only time you want to use the red B button in Dash Launch, and you'll see why in a minute. If you're on GTA, then you would want to stick that one in the last spot. If you're modding something like Call of Duty, say Black Ops 2 or something, check with the plugin settings to make sure it has, or just make sure that whatever setup that specific mod menu has, you are effectively being spoofed. So, like the which one is it? Well, there's one specific mod menu. Which one is it? Good grief! I mentioned it earlier. Iron Wolf. Iron Wolf mod menu. It has its own stealth built into it, so you could just put that in the plugin spot instead of 420. Then you're good to go. However, if you try booting up Call of Duty, Black Ops, whatever, without switching to the right mod menu for that game. So if you're still in a mod menu for GTA, such as a 420, and you boot up Black Ops, that's not a good thing. So if you are switching which game you want to play, always go into Dash Launch and change whichever plugin you have for the game you want to play, and then save it. Reboot your console, you're good to go. So once you've set all the settings here in Dash Launch, then you want to use the right bumper on your controller. Go down to, this is the save area. Scroll down to your hard drive. You want to hit the X button, which it saves it to your launch.ini file. And then you want to hit the A button, and that just loads it. So really all we're saying is the blue X button, save all the settings we just now made here. The green A button, now that we've saved it, set these as the current settings that you're always going to load. So when we reboot the console, it's going to load based on those specific settings. So I'm going to run, and I'll hit the red back button to go back to the dashboard. I currently do not have an unbanned KV on here, but I will, I'll demonstrate a few other things later when we have some time. Either way, you boot your console up, so one quick brief run through again so that you've got everything in a more concise manner here. You boot up, it takes you to your dashboard home, you go to Recent, go to your XEX menu, hit B button so you do not log into your user account. If you're launching a game and you already have the right mod menu plugin for that game in here, you can click the game right here if you've saved it to your hard drive. It will then prompt you to log in once the game is loading. At that point, you can log in. Otherwise, right or left bumper, DL installer, go into your dash launch. Go down to plugins. Go down to plugin 5. Green A again in the hard drive. Find the mod menu for the game you want to play. Select it with the green A button. Once everything looks correct, right bumper to the save screen. Go down to your HDD. Blue X to save. Green A to load. And then you're done. And then you can just hit the power button, reboot, and you're good to go. So that's the real quick rundown of XEX menu and dash launch. I will go over some of the other essentials as far as switching out your KV or saving a game to your console, things like that later. But this at least gives you a reference to look at in case you're having run into any questions if things are not working, which sometimes that does happen, and it helps to have something referenced there. Anyways, that is it for now. If you have any questions, leave in the description or hit me up. I will be sure to list my recommended stealth servers or KV dealers in the description, as well as a list of the necessary files for the hard drive and where to download them if you need that. All right, thanks for watching.